The war was over, but for Princess Illyra, it didn't feel like victory. She sat in a dimly lit room on a remote moon, hidden away from the eyes of both her people and the humans who had conquered them. The Zarvek Empire, once mighty, had fallen. Now, Illyra was nothing more than a fugitive, a relic of a defeated kingdom. Her hands trembled as she stared at the holographic screen before her. The news broadcast played across the galaxy, announcing the grand celebration of the war's end. The humans were honoring their greatest warrior, the one who had led them to victory. The phantom of the battlefield, the announcer's voice echoed. The hero who turned the tide of war. Illyra's sharp golden eyes narrowed as the image of a human soldier appeared on the screen. His face was hidden behind the sleek black helmet of his battle armor. Even so, the name below the image sent a chill down her spine. Leon Carter. Something about the name made her heart race. It wasn't just recognition. It was something deeper, something she couldn't explain. Why did it feel familiar? The memory was distant, blurred by years of war and pain. Illyra struggled to grasp it, but it remained just out of reach. She clenched her fists. She had to know the truth. "Are you really the same Leon I once knew?" she whispered to the screen. Illyra turned away and reached for her hooded cloak. She couldn't stay hidden anymore. If the human hero was truly the same person she was thinking of, then she had to see him with her own eyes. But this was dangerous. If the humans found out she was alive, they would arrest or kill her on sight. If the remnants of her own empire discovered her, they might betray her for their own survival. Yet, the risk didn't matter. Illyra made her decision. She stepped outside into the cold night air, her mind set on one goal: to uncover the truth about Leon Carter. The grand human capital was nothing like Illyra had imagined. Towering skyscrapers stretched into the sky, their glass surfaces reflecting the golden glow of artificial suns. The streets were crowded with aliens and humans alike, all celebrating the end of the war. Banners of victory hung from every corner, and massive holograms displayed the hero of the war, Leon Carter. Illyra pulled her hood lower over her face. Her heart pounded as she moved through the crowd, trying to remain unseen. If anyone recognized her, she was as good as dead. Her eyes flickered toward the center stage, where the ceremony was taking place. A massive crowd had gathered, cheering and waving banners as the human military officers stepped forward. A deep voice boomed through the speakers. "And now the hero who brought us victory. The one who ended the war. The phantom of the battlefield. Leon Carter." The cheers were deafening. Illyra's breath caught in her throat as a tall human soldier walked onto the stage, his black armor shining under the lights. The helmet still covered his face, making him look like a ghost of war. For a moment, Illyra hesitated. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe this wasn't the Leon she once knew. Then, slowly, he removed his helmet. The entire crowd erupted in cheers, but Illyra's world froze. She knew that face. The sharp blue eyes, the determined yet kind expression, the scar running across his cheek, faint but still there. It was him, Leon Carter, her childhood friend, the human boy who had once played in the fields of the neutral colony with her, long before the war had begun. The same boy who had promised to always protect her. Now, he was the man who had destroyed her people. Illyra felt a rush of emotions: shock, anger, betrayal, and something else she couldn't name. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run, but her feet remained planted. As Leon stepped forward to speak, she could barely hear his words. Her mind was spinning. How had this happened? How had the kind boy she knew become the warrior who led the charge against her empire? Illyra's hands clenched into fists. There was only one way to find out. She had to meet him. No matter what it took, no matter how dangerous it was, she had to confront Leon Carter. The military base was heavily guarded. Illyra stood in the shadows, watching as human soldiers moved in and out of the towering complex. Bright spotlights swept across the entrance, and security drones hovered in the air. scanning for intruders. Getting inside was impossible. But Alira had come too far to stop now. She had to see Leon. She took a deep breath and pulled her hood lower, blending into the crowd of alien refugees gathered outside the base. Many had come seeking help after the war, hoping for shelter or food. The guards barely paid attention to them. She moved carefully, stepping closer to the main gate, her heart pounding with every step. Just as she was about to slip past the checkpoint, a soldier blocked her path. "State your name and reason for being here," he ordered. His visor-covered eyes stared at her suspiciously. Alira's mind raced. If she gave the wrong answer, she would be arrested or worse. I need to see the hero," she said, lowering her voice to sound desperate. "Leon Carter." The soldier frowned. "You and 1,000 others." He gestured to the refugees. "The commander isn't meeting anyone today. Move along." Alira felt a surge of panic. She couldn't walk away. Not now. "I know him," she insisted, her voice trembling. "Please, tell him. An old friend is here." The soldier hesitated, then sighed. "Wait here." He turned and spoke into his comm device. Alira held her breath. Had she made a mistake? Would Leon even remember her? Minutes passed, and then a new figure emerged from the base, dressed in a dark military uniform. His blue eyes locked onto her, and for a moment, time stopped. Leon. His expression was unreadable as he approached. The crowd around them faded away. "What did you just say?" His voice was calm but sharp, full of curiosity and suspicion. Alira hesitated, then slowly removed her hood. Their eyes met. Leon's breath caught in his throat. His entire body tensed as he took a step closer, his gaze searching her face, as if trying to believe what he was seeing. "Alira," he whispered. Alira swallowed hard. "It's me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them seemed to disappear. Then Leon's expression changed. His shock turned into something else. Confusion, disbelief, and pain. "You're alive." His voice was barely above a whisper. Alira's chest tightened. She could feel the storm of emotions inside him. "Yes," she said, "and we need to talk." Leon exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Follow me." And with that, Alira stepped into the unknown, unsure if she was walking toward the truth or toward her own doom. Leon led Alira through the military base without saying a word. The corridors were lined with soldiers, their eyes filled with suspicion as they passed. Alira kept her hood low, her heart pounding in her chest. If anyone recognized her, she would be arrested on the spot. Finally, Leon stopped in front of a small, dimly lit room. He opened the door and motioned for her to enter. Once inside, the door shut behind them, sealing them away from the rest of the world. Alira turned to face Leon, her hands clenched into fists. So many words filled her mind, but she didn't know where to begin. Leon stared at her, his blue eyes full of emotions she couldn't read. "You're really alive," he said at last, his voice quieter than before. "I thought you were dead." Alira finished for him. She let out a bitter laugh. "I almost was." Leon exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "Alira, where have you been all these years?" "Hiding," she admitted. "Surviving. Watching as you and your people destroyed my home." Leon's expression hardened. "You think I wanted this war?" Alira stepped forward. "You led the charge against my empire. You became the humans' greatest warrior, the phantom of the battlefield." Leon's jaw tightened. "And what was I supposed to do? Stand back and watch while your empire burned my colony to the ground?" Alira's breath caught. "What?" Leon's eyes darkened. "You don't know, do you, what your people did to mine?" Alira shook her head. The truth was something she had never questioned, until now. Leon took a slow step closer, his voice calm but filled with something heavy. "Alira, I fought because your empire started this war. They invaded human colonies, wiped out entire cities. My family was there. His voice cracked at the last part. Alara staggered back. No, that can't be true. The Empire. The Empire lied to you, Leon said coldly, just like it lied to everyone else. Silence fell between them. Alira's mind spun. Could it really be true? Had everything she believed been a lie? Leon sighed and turned toward a console. With a few quick taps, a hologram appeared. Classified war reports, battle logs, footage of the destruction. Alira's golden eyes widened as she saw it. The burning cities. The massacred humans. The ruthless orders from her own empire. She felt sick. Leon's voice was quiet but firm. This is the truth, Alira. She closed her eyes, her world shattering around her. Everything she had fought for, everything she had lost. Had it all been for nothing? Alira's mind was a storm of confusion. The holographic reports still flickered before her, displaying cold, undeniable evidence of the atrocities committed by her own empire. The voices of her people's generals rang in her ears, issuing orders that led to the destruction of entire human colonies. She felt her knees go weak and leaned against the wall for support. "This can't be true," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was told we were defending ourselves. I was told the humans were the aggressors." Leon stood across the room, his arms crossed, watching her carefully. His expression was a mix of anger, sadness, and something she couldn't quite place, perhaps pity. "Of course they told you that," he said quietly. "Every government justifies their actions. They told you what you needed to hear so you'd fight for them. So you'd stay loyal." Alira looked up at him, her golden eyes shining with disbelief. "But the Zarvek Empire was supposed to be noble, honorable. We were fighting to protect our people, to protect our way of life." Leon shook his head slowly. "Alira, your empire's leaders didn't care about the people. They cared about power. They started this war because they wanted more territory, more resources, and they didn't care how many lives they destroyed along the way, human or Zarvek." His words struck her like a physical blow. The empire she had dedicated her life to, the cause she had believed in so deeply, was a lie. She felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her feet. "Why? Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Leon's eyes softened, though the pain in them didn't fade. "Because you deserve to know. I don't want you to be another pawn in their game. I saw what you were like back then, before the war. You weren't cruel. You weren't a tyrant. You were my friend." Alira's breath caught at the word, friend. She hadn't heard it in so long, it sounded foreign. But could she still call him that? After everything that had happened, after the war had turned them into enemies, could she trust him? Could she even trust herself? Leon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You can hate me all you want, Alira. I'm not telling you this to make you forgive me. I'm telling you because I think you deserve the truth. The war we fought, it didn't have to happen this way. But now that it's over, you have a chance to do something good, to make things right." Alira stared at him, her mind racing. The truth had shattered her, but it had also planted a seed of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Could she really change things? Could she undo the damage caused by the empire she once believed in? She didn't know. But she did know one thing. Her life would never be the same again. Alira stood in the dimly lit room, her heart still heavy from everything Leon had revealed. She needed time to process it all, to figure out what it meant for her and for her future. But there was no time. The door behind them burst open, and 3 figures stormed in. Their faces were covered, their movements swift and deadly. The glint of weapons caught Leon's eye, and he instinctively stepped in front of Alira. "Get down," Leon shouted. Before Alira could react, a shot rang out, barely missing her shoulder. She dropped to the floor as Leon lunged forward. His combat training kicked in. The first attacker swung a blade, but Leon grabbed the assailant's wrist and twisted. The weapon clattered to the floor. Alara watched in stunned silence as Leon moved like the soldier he was. He disarmed another attacker with a well-placed kick, then used the fallen weapon to block the third. The room was filled with the sound of clashing steel and heavy grunts. Alara scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking. She grabbed a fallen chair and swung it at one of the attackers. The blow connected, sending the masked figure stumbling. "Stay behind me," Leon ordered, his voice sharp. "I'm not going to hide." Alara shot back. Her instincts, long honed by years of survival, took over. She ducked as another blade sliced through the air and countered with a quick jab, her movements more agile than the attackers had expected. The surprise gave Leon the opening he needed. With a final forceful strike, he took down the last of the assailants. Breathing heavily, Leon turned to her. "Are you hurt?" Alara shook her head, her golden eyes wide. "No, I'm fine." Leon stepped closer to the fallen attackers and pulled off one of their masks. Beneath it was a face she recognized. A Zarvek loyalist. Her heart sank. These weren't human soldiers. They were her own people. "They came for you," Leon said quietly, reading her expression. Alara felt a chill run down her spine. Her own people, the one she had once sworn to protect, had tried to kill her. Leon walked over to her, his voice low but steady. "If they've tracked you here, we can't stay. They'll send more." Alara nodded, her hands clenching into fists. Her mind raced. If the loyalists were after her, it wasn't just because she was a fugitive. It was because they saw her as a threat. But why now? What had changed? Leon grabbed her arm gently. "We have to move. Now." She glanced at him, her old friend who had just risked his life to save her again. For a moment, she felt a flicker of trust. "All right," she said, her voice firm. "Let's go." Together, they stepped into the shadows, leaving behind the chaos and stepping toward an uncertain future. Alara and Leon hurried through the maze of the military base's lower corridors. Every step echoed ominously, and Alira's heartbeat pounded in her ears. She couldn't stop glancing over her shoulder, certain that more attackers would appear at any moment. Leon led the way, his sharp blue eyes scanning for any sign of danger. He moved with the precision of a soldier who'd survived countless battles. Alara tried to keep her breathing steady, but the fear gnawed at her. She'd always known the risks of coming here, but now the reality felt far heavier than she had imagined. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice low. Leon didn't look back. "There's a service tunnel that leads out of the base. It's off the official grid. If we're lucky, it won't be monitored." "If we're lucky," she echoed. Luck hadn't been on her side for a long time. They turned a corner, and Leon suddenly raised a hand to stop her. He pressed himself against the wall, signaling for Alara to do the same. She froze, straining to listen. Voices drifted from a nearby corridor. "They've spotted us," Leon whispered. Alara's heart sank. Leon glanced at her. "Can you run?" "Yes," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Good. When I say go, we move. Stick close, and don't stop for anything." She nodded. "Go." Leon took off at a sprint, and Alara followed, her cloak trailing behind her. The voices shouted behind them, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots pounding against the metal floor. Leon veered sharply into a side passage, Alara close behind. They burst into a narrow maintenance corridor, filled with exposed pipes and flickering lights. The walls seemed to close in, and the air was damp and stale. "This way," Leon urged, his voice tight with urgency. Alara didn't question him. She followed, her legs burning as they climbed a steep staircase. At the top, Leon forced open a rusted hatch. Beyond it was a pitch-dark tunnel. "This is the service shaft," he said, his voice lower now. "It'll lead us out." Alara glanced back, hearing the faint shouts of their pursuers. She didn't hesitate. They slipped into the darkness, the hatch sealing behind them. The tunnel was silent except for their footsteps and their heavy breathing. Elira struggled to push away the thoughts racing through her mind. Her people, her own people, had tried to kill her. She couldn't deny it any longer. The Zarvek loyalists were hunting her, and they wouldn't stop until she was dead. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Leon's voice broke the silence. Elira, when we get out of here, we need to talk about what comes next. She didn't respond right away. What could she say? She didn't even know what she wanted anymore. But one thing was certain, the hunt had begun, and there was no turning back. Elira leaned against the cold metal wall of the abandoned maintenance tunnel. They'd been running for what felt like hours, her breath ragged and her muscles burning. Leon crouched a few feet away, his sharp gaze fixed on the distant corridor behind them. His weapon was drawn, ready for any sign of pursuit. For now, they were safe, but Elira knew it wouldn't last. She looked down at her hands, trembling not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what she'd learned. The empire she had once fought for had betrayed her. The people she had sworn to protect had turned on her. And now the humans, people she'd been raised to hate, seemed like her only chance for survival. I need to make a decision, she whispered, more to herself than to Leon. He turned toward her, his voice steady despite the strain on his face. What decision? Elira met his gaze, golden eyes filled with uncertainty. Whether to keep running or face them. Whether to stay hidden forever, or reclaim my place. Leon didn't respond immediately. He sat down beside her, his weapon still in his hand. It's your choice, Elira. No one can make it for you. But whatever you choose, you won't have to face it alone. His words caught her off guard. She'd never expected such unwavering loyalty from him, not after all they'd been through. But now, after everything, she realized that Leon had stayed by her side not out of duty, but out of something deeper. But if I step forward, she said, her voice tinged with fear, they'll come for me. The loyalists will try to kill me again. And the humans. She paused, shaking her head. They won't trust me either. Leon's gaze softened. They might not trust you at first, but trust is built. If you speak the truth, if you show them who you really are, people will listen. Elira clenched her fists. She had spent so long hiding, so long surviving, that she had forgotten what it felt like to take control of her own destiny. Could she truly step out into the open again? Could she fight for something more than just her own survival? I don't know if I'm strong enough, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Leon gave her a small, reassuring smile. You're stronger than you think. I've seen it before. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Elira looked at him, searching his eyes for doubt or hesitation. She found none. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and forced the fear out of her voice. I'll do it. I'll face them. I'll tell the truth, and I'll fight for what's right. Leon nodded, standing with her. Then let's get out of here and start making it happen. As they prepared to move forward, Elira felt the faintest spark of hope. For the first time in years, she wasn't running away. She was running toward something. The Neutral War Tribunal was nothing like Elira expected. The sprawling chamber had walls of polished stone and glass, designed to give an air of peace and fairness. Delegates from all over the galaxy filled the rows, some dressed in flowing robes, others in sharp military uniforms. Murmurs of conversation echoed through the vast room as everyone waited for the session to begin. Elira stood off to the side, cloaked and hooded, her golden eyes scanning the crowd. Leon stood at her shoulder, his calm presence steadying her nerves. She still wasn't used to seeing him in civilian clothes. The lack of armor made him seem more vulnerable, but somehow more approachable too. They're all waiting to hear the truth, Leon said quietly, reading her hesitation. Elira tightened her grip on the data tablet in her hand. The evidence she carried was damning. Battle records, intercepted communications, and orders from her own government that exposed the lies behind the war. It was the proof no one wanted to admit existed. Do you think they'll even believe me? She asked, her voice low. They will, Leon replied. When they see the evidence, they won't be able to deny it. The main doors swung open, and a hush fell over the chamber. The tribunal had arrived. 5 high-ranking officials, each representing a major galactic power, took their seats at the head of the room. Their expressions were stern, their gazes sharp. As the proceedings began, Elira's chest tightened. It felt like the air itself was pressing down on her. The loyalists would know she was here. The humans, too, would question her motives. But there was no turning back. Leon gave her a small nod. It's time. Taking a deep breath, Elira stepped forward. As she removed her hood, a ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Murmurs turned into a low roar as those who recognized her whispered her name. Princess Elira, one of the tribunal members said, his tone laced with both awe and suspicion. You dare to appear here after all that's happened? I didn't come here to defend the Empire's actions, Elira replied, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I came to expose the truth. The chamber grew silent. Elira placed the data tablet on the central console, activating a holographic display. The damning records appeared. Orders from Zarvek leaders to attack neutral colonies, plans to frame humans for atrocities, and the cover-up of civilian casualties. This is what the war was built on, Elira said, her voice rising with conviction. Lies, manipulation, and greed. The Empire's leaders used their people as pawns, and I was one of them. But no longer. I'm here to help make things right. Leon stood behind her, his presence a silent show of support. She knew he was ready to act if anyone tried to silence her. For the first time, Elira didn't feel afraid. She felt something else. Determination. Elira stood tall as the tribunal fell into stunned silence. The evidence she had presented, the records of her empire's deceit, had been broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. What had once been whispered in dark corners was now undeniable fact. The Zarvek loyalists had no choice but to retreat. Their influence shattered under the weight of the truth. The humans, long fueled by anger and mistrust, began to see that the war's horrors weren't as black and white as they had believed. But the room didn't feel victorious to Elira. It felt fragile, as if one wrong word could shatter this newfound understanding. Leon stepped forward, his calm, commanding presence anchoring her in place. You've done it, he said quietly, his blue eyes meeting hers. They can't deny the truth anymore. Now it's up to them to decide what to do next. She nodded, still unsure of what her role would be. Her title as princess had been stripped away long ago. Her people were scattered and leaderless. The humans would never fully trust her, not after what she represented. But when she looked at Leon, she realized she didn't need a title. She didn't need the Empire's power. She just needed to keep fighting for what was right. Will you go back? Elira asked, her voice soft. Leon tilted his head slightly. To the military. He shook his head. No, I've seen enough war. If I go back, it won't be as a soldier. It'll be as someone who's trying to prevent the next one. Elira took a breath, her chest still tight with uncertainty. And what about me? Leon smiled faintly. That's up to you. But if you want my advice. I do, she interrupted. Then be what your people need. Not the princess they remember, but the leader they've never had. Show them a better way. His words struck a chord within her. She couldn't change the past, but perhaps she could shape the future. And for the first time, she felt the strength to try. As the tribunal members called for a recess, Elira turned to face the room. She didn't know what came next, but she knew this. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She would step forward into whatever future awaited, no longer as a fugitive or a forgotten princess, but as someone who would fight for a new beginning. And as she glanced back at Leon, standing quietly by her side, she felt the smallest flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough.